Hello, my name is Genesis Varela, and today I'm going to be sharing an article called Support Services and Social Studies Courses for Students with Hearing Loss. And it was written by Alif K. And here's my name, Genesis Varela. As we know, in social studies classes, students typically are encountered with problems mainly associated with acquiring the meaning of concepts, perceiving time, and establishing critical reasoning, which can be specific skills that students with hearing loss may face. So all these skills that they are learning in a social studies classroom might be difficult to learn because they are struggling with critical thinking skills themselves. And this is what this article talks about, and I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the overview of the article and the theory. Restrictions on hearing and language input have a negative effect on the development of creativity, abstract thinking, event sequencing, interpretation, summarizing, understanding alternative perspectives, critical reasoning, and time perception. So, in that paragraph, it just tells us how students with hearing loss are restricted in all these areas. And if you think about it, all these areas are so important when learning any topic from a social studies classroom. And the focus is on critical thinking skills, which is one of the aims of the social studies course. And critical thinking is a way of thinking that allows a student to connect events and facts by combining experiences and knowledges learned. And critical thinking actually promotes the use of processes that involve classifying, analyzing, summarizing, and those are huge things that take part of a social studies class. And as I think of my personal experience in high school, it was all about connecting events from the past and now using timelines and just how you're comparing the dates from even how women were treated in the 1920s and now in 2018. And you're just comparing events, and it just requires critical thinking, and those are skills that might be difficult to acquire for students with hearing loss. And here we have a teacher. You can tell that she's signing to two of the students, but one of them does look really confused. So there's that picture. So systematic support services should be implemented in the classroom, which is also a huge part of this article. We talk about critical thinking skills. It's a huge part of this article, but also it talks about how we as teachers need to provide services that can be implemented in our classrooms to help students with hearing loss participate in discussions, as well as teacher-student interaction, which is also a huge part of a social studies class. Students who have difficulties differentiating essential knowledge among the broad content of the school curriculum should be presented with social studies topics clearly with the help of web-based primary sources, visual presentations, and associations. So if they're not able to connect events that have happened in history, we need to make sure we do applications, and this article makes a really huge emphasis on that topic. Alright, and now we're going to move on to the author's perspective. So, we're talking about the development of students with hearing loss fails to comply with the conceptual development of students with the hearing ability. So, of course, he gives a foundation of how these students are affected and how, the conceptual development of students with the hearing ability fails in the classroom. Students with hearing loss should be supported regarding their critical thinking skills by identifying and using reference sources. So this was actually they provided information, and it was actually a research they did to see if all these strategies help students with hearing loss improve their skills. And of course, it talked about identifying and using reference sources, and it can be perception of chronology and critical reasoning strategies. And then identifying and using reference sources allows students to think about a topic using primary sources such as documents, interviews, letters, diaries, photos, and historical artifacts. So those were some of the resources that the author really emphasized and talked about, which it was new to me, and I didn't realize that, as a student, those were so important. And, I don't have a hearing problem, and yet I took those for granted, even pictures, documents, videos, movies, and I didn't realize how much it helped with my learning process and how students with hearing limitations have problems because of their critical thinking skills. Alright, so then we have my personal reaction. So I just kind of started, again, critical thinking is a way of thinking that enables the connection between events. So that was just a huge thing that I learned from this article, and how they're essential and should be implemented in every lesson. So as a teacher, I was challenged to have that in my lessons, and so I'm able to allow my students to connect information from events and facts by combining, experiences and knowledge, and, making it meaningful to them. And, some of the struggles that these students are facing is that they have inadequate knowledge and awareness. So me as a teacher, this is when I come in. That was my, my personal reaction. I was highly challenged by this. And then critical thinking skills will help students make connections between events by combining experiences and knowledge learned. And the last one, create meaningful lessons. That was definitely something I learned from this. Use photos, documentaries, movies, and timelines. And those are just, 4 examples that I provided, but the author provided so many, and just how to help and how to accommodate the needs of these students. Alright, so the implications to practice. And this was a direct quote from the text that I read. It says, teachers are required to prepare activities that involve multiple strategies, provide students with adequate time to think about the answers to the questions, ask questions, and present activities that require the combination of knowledge and experience. So I thought that was a really important thing for teachers and for the implication to practice. Just because sometimes we're so used to just moving on to the next thing, but we don't take the time to think and to allow students to think of the questions and how to present the lesson in a way that would help them, make those connections with the events. Students with hearing difficulties should be presented historical topics with web-based primary sources, presentations, and associations. They need to be able to associate. So again, going back to making the lessons meaningful. And then lastly, encouraging students to associate historical concepts with real life, confirming times and determining relations between events. So again, it's a whole thing about making the lesson meaningful, and that means, making the historical concepts coming to life. How can we relate that to our students' life? If we're in a social studies class and we're talking about the next president and voting, have the students vote, even if they're not there, they can't vote yet, but have them pretend what it would be like to be, what a regular citizen would do, voting, and what it is to accept each other's opinions, and being working as a classroom and as a team, and that you're just making connections and meaningful experiences for them to understand what it is to elect our president, or even events. Do role play. Don't just do movies. Movies are great for students with, hearing loss, because, they're able to look at the pictures and everything. But if they're able to act it out, or if they're able to see the teachers acting it out, or other students, having speakers, or people come visit your classroom, I don't know, make it meaningful for them. So those are extremely important for implications to practice the services and social studies courses for students with hearing loss. And then we have the references right here. And that is all. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate your time. Thank you.